When you think about antiquities, what comes into your head? Maybe it is Rome or Greece. A lot of people think of Jesus. All of those are events and antiquities, but there is so much more that builds the foundation for what we call antiquities. First, we need to start with a definition. When you look up a definition on Google or in a dictionary, it says ancient times, especially before the Middle Ages. But it is so much more than that. My definition of antiquities is a time from creation to the fall of Rome that gave us the foundation of what we believe as a human society. All of what we believe, no matter if you believe in materialism, Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, it all came from antiquities. Antiquities had a massive impact on the world as we know it today. There were several things that impacted antiquities that I am going to talk about. These things being Abraham, Greece, and Alexander the Great. You can't talk about antiquities without mentioning Abraham. Abraham is the founding father of 3 religions, those being Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Abraham's faith was a huge part of his life. In the Bible, it said that Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. He had so much faith in God that he was willing to sacrifice his one and only son. This was a big deal because God had promised to Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the grains of sand on the seashore. This kind of faith is something that we should all strive for. Although Abraham's faith was something to be admired, he did let doubt and unbelief take over at times. When God promised Abraham that he would be the father of nations, Abraham didn't believe him at first because his wife Sarah was too old to have kids. So he took it into his own hands and had a son with his wife's slave, Hagar. This eventually caused trouble between Sarah and her son Isaac, and Hagar and her son Ishmael. Another example of when Abraham did not trust God is when he traveled to Egypt with his wife. His wife was very pretty, and so he was afraid that the people in Egypt would kill him and take his wife. So he told them that Sarah was his sister. This caused trouble with the king of Egypt, and he returned Sarah to Abraham and scolded him for not telling the truth. Believe it or not, this happened not just once, but twice. This reminds me of something I learned while I was in Israel. We talked about how it is important to obey God first, and He will give you anything else you need to complete that task after you have obeyed Him. Abraham did this when he was willing to sacrifice his son, but not when he went to Egypt. This is a very hard thing to do. You have to make a conscious decision every day to obey the Lord. I find myself trying to think through a situation instead of trusting the Lord with the intangibles and just obeying Him. We can learn a lot of things from Abraham, but his faith, though not perfect, is one to strive for. We don't realize it, but the whole Western thought process stems from the Greek civilization. Although Greece is not a thriving civilization today, its ideas are still being consumed by our culture. Greece was a very diverse civilization. It had several different races and multiple different cultures, so there was no one belief that was held above the others. They had their own belief in a lot of different gods. These gods were in charge of certain things. Greek gods were very immoral and sinful. The people believed that gods controlled their lives and did what pleased them. In other words, the people believed that their lives were completely random and controlled by the gods. Thus, their lives didn't have meaning. Greek theater was another huge part of Greece that impacted our culture today. There were 2 main types of plays: tragedies and comedies. Tragedies were very dramatic. They were the story of how someone went through a very hard time in life, usually ending in death. It was ultimately showing the randomness of life and how the gods could toss your life like dice. Comedies were very funny plays that used wordplay and inappropriate references to draw the attention of the audience. Greek dramas were ultimately evil. There was a lot of good things that came from Greece, but the ideas behind these things are sinful and immoral. The ideas and beliefs that the Greeks invented have polluted our society and turned our people into a sinful culture.
Some of you, perhaps myself, will not live to see the sun set over these mountains today. But I say to you, what every warrior has known since the beginning of time, conquer your fear! And I promise you, you'll conquer death!
When one hears the name Alexander the Great, they immediately think of a strong man who conquered most of the known world of his time. While this is true, Alexander had a big character issue that not a lot of people know about. But first, we need to talk about his background. His father was King Philip of Macedonia. When he was little, he was tutored by Aristotle. He wasn't just a military man. He was gifted in a lot of things. He was very bright. He was taught by his mom that he was the son of Zeus. It was ingrained in him that he would do great things when he was older. At a young age, he was a big part of his father's army. By age 18, he controlled the entire left wing. When his father was assassinated, he took over as king and wanted to conquer the known world. He set out and conquered Asia Minor, the Mediterranean, and part of Iran. But it was never enough for him. He went to Babylonia to solve a problem that had arose there. But instead of solving the problem, he began to party and to drink. He eventually caught a fever and died. It was most likely that he got sick because of his drunkenness. Alexander was a very talented man, but he never had enough. He let pride get in his way and it consumed him until he eventually couldn't take it anymore, and he squandered his life away partying and drinking. Alexander was a great example of talent squandered. This is a hard lesson to learn, but to live the lives Christ wants us to, we must understand that Christ is enough for us. There are so many events that happened in antiquity that help shape our world today as we know it. Some of those things were good, and some of those things weren't so good. But all of them, whether we like it or not, had an impact on the world we live in today. 3 of those things that impact our day-to-day lives are Abraham, Greece, and Alexander the Great. One thing that all of these people had in common is they had followers. Another way you could put it would be to say that these events and people had disciples. One of the days we were in Israel, we got the chance to go visit Capernaum. While we were in Capernaum, we talked about the importance of being good disciples and also leading in a way that makes people follow you. The original definition of being a disciple literally means to follow in the footsteps of your rabbi. Disciples would literally walk behind a rabbi and try to copy his gait so that they could learn as much as possible from him. The goal is to soak up as much wisdom as the rabbi has to offer. We can do this in a lot of ways. The most important thing we can invest our time in as believers is trying our best to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. In order to do this, we need to read and read and read the Bible. This will help us to be the best Christians we can be. The other side of the coin is to be someone that people want to follow. If we truly walk in the footsteps of Christ, we will have people following us. Discipleship is something that could change the course of Christianity if we do it the way Christ intended it to be done. Now let us walk in the footsteps of Jesus and never turn back.